You can go ahead, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, I'd like to call tonight's regular council meeting to order. Recommendation that the agenda for the regular council meeting of February 7th, 2022 be adopted with the amended by adding tourism CIF grant application for letter of support for interpretive signage to item 4D. Moved by Councillor Scott Morvan, second by Councillor Randhawa. Anybody opposed? Motion is carried. Item 3A, recommendation that the minutes of the special council meeting of January 24th, 2022 be adopted. Moved by Councillor Scott Morvan, seconded by Councillor Adie. Anybody opposed? Motion's carried. Item 3B, recommendation the minutes of the regular council meeting of January 24th, 2022 be adopted. Moved by Councillor Cunningham, seconded by Councillor Randhawa. Anybody opposed? Motion's carried. Okay, first up, we have a report from the corporate administrator regarding council resolution statuses and updates.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There's no resolution required for this item tonight. It's just merely an FYI for council.
Okay, so there's no updates then?
No, everything is provided in the document that was shown to you. I will just make note that the Torca pump track that was presented previously, we are working with the organization to move that forward.
Okay, thank you. Any comments from council? Okay, next we have a report from planning regarding DVP 2111 for 885 Borden Street.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to introduce Mifan Pope. She's one of our new planners, and this report and then the following one are her work, so she'll speak to both of them. And I'd just like to note that we're very pleased to have her here, and she's fitting in very nicely.
Great, welcome.
Thank you. So I'll start with the DVP for 885 Borden Street. So request for development variance permit for 885 Borden Street. The applicant wishes to build a back deck the width of their house, which is approximately 6.4 meters by 3.05 meters. The side yard lot setback for the house is within an R2 zone, and the side yard lot setback is 1.2 meters from the property line within that zone. And they wish to have a variance within the side lot yards. And so the current building encroaches about 0.9 meters into the required east side setback and 0.87 meters into the required setback for the west side of the property. And then the proposed deck would maintain these side yard encroachments and require the corresponding variance. The impact of this setback on the surrounding neighborhood has no negative impacts. However, the public will have the opportunity to provide input during the public consultation period. And it is recommended that the council proceeds with the statutory notification process for this DVP.
Great, thank you. So the recommendation that council proceeds with the statutory notification process for development variance permit application DVP 2111. Moved by Councillor Scott Morvan, second by Councillor Niche. Any comments? Okay, anybody opposed? Motion is carried. Okay, next we have another report from planning, DVP 2202 for 945 Hayes Cove Avenue.
Yep. So this application is a request for a variance for section 526A and C, which designates front and side property setback requirements for R2 zones. The applicant wishes to renovate their home, including replacing the second floor and roof, adding a second floor addition, and building a back deck. So the second floor addition would encroach about 5.1 centimeters into the required setback from the east side property line. The second floor deck at the rear of the building would encroach on the west side property line setback by about 8.3 centimeters, or by 8.3 centimeters. And the second floor will be built in line with the first floor, which has an existing encroachment of 0.67 meters or 67.3 centimeters into the required setback at the front property line. And the R2 zone requires setbacks for 3.6 meters from the front property line and 1.2 meters from the side property line. So the applicant would require variances to proceed with the plans provided. There are no negative impacts for this variance from the surrounding neighborhood, but the public will have the opportunity to provide input during the public consultation period, and it is recommended that council proceeds with the statutory notification process for this DVP.
Great, thank you. Recommendation the council proceeds with the statutory notification process for DVP 2202. Moved by Councillor Scott Morvan, second by Councillor Adie. Any comments? Anyone opposed? Motion's carried. Thank you very much. Okay, next we have item 4D, letter of support of Tourism Prince Rupert. So the recommendation that council consider an application for a letter of support to Tourism Prince Rupert in support of their application to NDIT for marketing initiatives program to support the development of a new, more robust visitor website, and also to support a CI, or is that a separate resolution, Ms. Miller?
No, Mr. Mayor, you can do them as one.
Okay, and then also to support their tourism to a CFI grant application for a letter of support for their interpretive signage. Moved by Councillor Winhour, second by Councillor Moreau. Discussion? Okay, anybody opposed? Motion's carried. Next, we have a report from Corporate Administrator regarding a letter of support for the Odd Eidsvik Community Park. Do you want to speak to this, Ms. Miller?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We did receive an email from Mr. Robert Stromdahl, who is working with a group of community citizens to improve the park on Atlan Avenue. They are looking for other sources of funding and are looking for support of council tonight in support of their various grant applications.
Okay, so a recommendation that council consider an application for a letter of support in support of our grant applications to improve the Odd Eidsvik Community Park on Atlan Avenue. Moved by Councillor Adie, seconded by Councillor Cunningham. Discussion? Okay, is there anybody opposed? Motion is carried. Next, we have a report from our Director of Operations and Intergovernmental Relations, Mr. Pucci. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The recommendation is that Mayor and Council pass a resolution to support staff applying for the ICIP grant for the Omineca Avenue wastewater treatment facility. So as Council is aware, we are looking to do a wetland treatment system for our sewage. This is a green and innovative solution, and we are doing the pilot program below the Omineca area, and we would be taking the lift station offline and doing a little wetland down there, and then monitoring the results. We believe that the cost of this is just over $6 million, as you can see in the cost and budget impact, and we would be going to the government for $4,030,000. This would significantly decrease the amount of capital that the taxpayer would have to come up with. So we would reduce our complement from the city to about $1.5 million, which fits within our approved budget. So we are asking that council support this application to go through. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Skelton Morvin's moving the recommendation, second by Councillor Adie. Discussion? Councillor Niche, then Councillor Moreau, then Councillor Morvin.
I'm just curious to know, I believe I read that it was to service 100 houses, and my question is if this worked, would that particular site be able to take on more houses than just 100, or is that the maximum of that site, even in the end, if it did work?
So the pilot program is just for the 100 homes, or approximately 100 homes that are there. But we would have it so that it is scalable and expandable up to take a bigger area. So what we want to do is ensure that the technology and the treatment works. So we want to run it for at least 1 year and monitor the results and make sure that it works before we expand that area. So, but yes, it can be expanded in that area.
Now, is that cost if you added another 100 houses, would that cost be essentially doubling the cost of the project, or is there quite a bit of money that's already put out that you would just adding on to it would be a small increase on top of it?
It would be a small increase. The reason why the cost of this pilot program is so high is because of the challenges with the grade and the challenges with the area where it is. We chose to do this site just because we were ready to invest in the Omineca pump station. So that pump station would have taken about $500,000 to $750,000 to revamp. It's one of our oldest ones in our arsenal. So we decided to use this as our pilot program Plus, it feeds all gravity to that area. So a large portion of the cost to develop this pilot program is the access cost. So once those are done once, then they will not be incurred again.
Thank you.
Councillor Morrow.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I think you already did briefly touch on this, Mr. Pucci, but I just want to follow up on the time frame that you had referenced in your report around a full year of operation once it's complete to kind of determine the effectiveness. Obviously, with time pressing in the legislative obligations that the federal government's put in place, is that 1 year what we need internally to demonstrate its effectiveness, or is that a prescribed timeline that the federal government needs to see this operate and work for before they'll invest in the next phase?
I would say it's a little bit of both, Councillor. We've have an administrative directive, or we're in the process of getting an administrative directive from the federal government that allows us to implement this as a new and innovative green way to treat our sewage. And with that, we've sort of have a term sheet with them about how we'll implement this and then monitor it to ensure that the results are compliant with the current regulations. All of our data and the other pilot programs that have been completed show that this treatment will work and that it should be fine. But we do have to demonstrate it in all seasons that it will be able to perform.
Councillor Scott Marvin.
Yeah, I just wanted to speak to some of the aspects of this. I think that should this work and be viable, the substantial savings that this would incur for the city of Prince Rupert, given that we have an alternative that doesn't necessarily pollute the community in the same way that some of the emissions that would come from a sewage treatment plant. So, for me, I just wanted to speak. Thank Mr. Pucci for his work on this file, and I just let you know that I'm in favor.
Thank you.
Councillor Cunningham, did I see your hand up?
Yeah, no, this is a great idea. And that my question to Mr. Pucci is if this works, and because of the infrastructure of the storm sewers and the sewer system, it goes into different outfalls, would it apply to each outfall in the end?
Yes, yeah. So what we've done is a feasibility study that shows that there would be 11 of these areas throughout the community, 11 of these wetland areas that would be able to treat all of the waste from our community. These 11 areas would be situated in current green spaces and in areas that will almost service as park-like. I mean, these areas are marshes, but they don't have any smell. They don't have any visual signs of waste. They're a system that are covered, so there's no waste coming through. But we've designed them, and we have the feasibility that they will be implemented in our green spaces throughout our community.
Okay, the other question is this going to be considered primary or secondary treatment?
It will be considered both. So
it will, okay.
Yeah, it will be secondary treatment.
So then we'd be meeting all the federal requirements of sewer treatment.
Correct. There are a few communities in Canada that are using this, and they are meeting the lesser regulations right now. They are coastal communities on the East Coast that are around the same population as us. There are two in BC that use a similar style to this, but they are very small. So what we're doing we'll be the first on the West Coast that has this size of treatment. Okay.
Now, where would the wetlands actually be situated for the first one anyway?
So at this point right now, for the first year, we would be capturing everything and monitoring it, and then putting it back into the system and out the outfall. And then once it is approved to be released, then it would be released as into the creek. It would meet all the regulations to have a proper discharge, and that would be a slow release.
Okay, thank you. Great work.
Yeah,
no, great work. It's going to save us a lot of money in the long run. We were predicting $150 million. So this is actually a windfall for the city. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Councillor Renha.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I think it's a great idea. and hopefully this will be successful, and we can do the same in the other part of the town. And I'd like to congratulate our staff. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Scott Morgan, did you have a follow-up there?
Just a follow-up to Councillor Cunningham's comment there, and just that right now with the way that things are set up at this point, the outflows go into the ocean. So for us to have a slow release versus just completely compiling everything into the ocean, as with other communities and municipalities that are also on the coast, I think for Rupert to continue to be a municipality that remains extremely enterprising and forward-thinking, and it's just kind of a testament to our leadership team and our staff. So I just again thank Mr. Pucci and then all of those involved in this file.
Thank you.
I'll just comment that I think it was actually 220 million we were actually estimating for the traditional approach, wasn't it?
It was around 100. So in 2015 dollars, it was 175. So it's over 200 now.
Right.
Yeah.
So we're looking at the total project cost on a solution like this, if this ends up becoming feasible, like well over 120 million dollars in savings, right?
Correct. We're projecting this right now at between about 75 million. Yeah.
Right. So it's about the same amount as the water system has costed us to build.
Mm-hmm. And sorry, and not to
Yep.
interrupt, but it is an approach that is sustainable, and the maintenance associated with it is quite low, and it's obviously a green and environmentally friendly approach.
Yeah, I think this is a great solution to this problem. I mean, when we were kind of first getting started with the water supply in 2015, I mean, the grants that are available are usually the same. Grant money, waste, and water are usually the same. So we obviously chose water supply as the first endeavor to move on. And now, it's almost a blessing in disguise that this solution has come now, because now this is the time to start moving forward with the waste treatment. So I think that's great that you've discovered this. And I think what we might want to do is maybe have some information for the public. I've sat through a presentation on the technology, what this really is, and obviously what it does, but I think it would be interesting, not necessarily a rush, but at some point this year to have maybe a video or something that comes out to the public that explains what these engineered wetlands kind of look like, what the technology is, make sure the Q&A is kind of answered about what that is, especially if we do get the grant money, and start engaging residents on the long-term solution, because obviously this will be many years still in the future for this to all be completed. Most likely this next 8-year stint will be this next project, but it's finally starting to happen, and I commend you guys for getting this to this point now.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Okay, anybody want to move the recommendation? Moved by Councillor Scout Morvan, second by Councillor Adie. Any further discussion? Councillor Adie? Or did you just have your hand up?
No, I just had my hand up.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Is there anybody opposed? Motion's carried. Okay, next we have a report from our corporate administrator regarding street name resident request.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So we've had a report submitted by Ms. Friesen, who's with the Community Paramedicine in Prince Rupert, and she's looking to request that all intersections and streets be reviewed and labeled so that they could have corresponding addresses, which would aid in identification for emergency services. So given an initial review of the file, staff is requesting that given the significant resources that would be required in implementing such a program, that we would be requested to review the package in its entirety to ensure that it fits in with the 2022 budget and already approved work plan.
Sure. Anybody want to approve the recommendation then? Or move it, sorry. Moved by Councillor Ron, seconded by Councillor Scout Morvan. Discussion? Okay, is there anybody opposed? Motion's carried. Next, we have a report from the corporate administrator regarding a letter of support for the Oldfield Creek Hatchery. Recommendation that council considers an application for a letter of support in support of a grant application for Oldfield Creek Hatchery. Moved by Councillor Cunningham, seconded by Councillor Adie. Discussion? Go ahead.
Just as a background, I was approached by the volunteer group that's in charge of the hatchery around the time that September or October flooding happened. And it basically put them completely out of action. And so what they're looking for in the way of funding is funding to clear the debris away from their intake, where the water goes into the hatchery itself. And probably as a result of clearing that, they'll discover that there's work to be done with the pipeline as well. And just in service of in support of it, the hatchery, not only does it play a role in terms of producing salmon for the Skeena River watershed, it also serves a really positive purpose in terms of educational opportunities for not only school-aged children, but people who come visiting from out of town to see what a hatchery does and what it works, and it's very accessible to the public. And it's also a credit to its history as a credit to the efforts of volunteers. So I'm very much in support of giving them this letter of support.
Okay, any further comments? Anybody opposed? Motion is carried. Next, we have a letter of support for Friendship House Association. So recommendation that council considers an application for a letter of support in support of the Friendship House Association of Prince Rupert's PRPA CIF grant application. Moved by Councillor Cunningham, seconded by Councillor Niche. Discussion. Anybody opposed? Motion carried. Next, another letter of support for the golf club. Recommendation that council consider an application of letter of support for the Prince Rupert Golf Club in support of their applications to NDIT, Recreation Infrastructure Grant, and the Prince Rupert Port Authority's Community Investment Fund. Moved by Councillor Cunningham, second by Councillor Randhawa. Discussion. Anybody opposed? Motion is carried. Next, we have a letter of support for the Snow Valley Nordic Ski Club. A recommendation that council considers an application for a letter of support in support of the Snow Valley Nordic Ski Club's application to the PRPA's Community Investment Fund. Moved by Councillor Scout Morvan, seconded by Councillor Cunningham. Discussion. Councillor Niche.
From my understanding, the Community Investment Fund, I don't think they only take one application a year as far as handing out money. And we've just approved letter of supports for 2 local ones. And this is not a local initiative, this is out of town. And to me, I would rather support something that supports Prince Rupert. And so that being said, I would be against a letter of support for this application.
Councillor Adie.
Yeah, I'm in agreement, although I would make a point that approving letters of support is not the same as being in the position of deciding which way to allocate funds, and that responsibility and that choice lies with the relevant people at the port. But I agree. I guess my question was, can we assume that they got a letter of support to the same effect from Terrace or Kitimat? Do we have that information?
I'm not sure. I don't think staff know. Do you know, Ms. Miller?
I'm just quickly reviewing the documentation Mr. Mayor has provided to me, and I do believe they have requested letters of support from Terrace and Kitimat as well as Prince Rupert.
Yeah, I think Councillor Niche that they do. I believe they do more than one project at a time with this fund. I think they do a variety of projects, but ultimately they look at things like legacy and that type of thing. I know that the port gave Shames a bunch of I think money was it last year or the year before that for some of the projects there. So things that are regional as well. I understand the view of it being out of town. I personally don't see the issue of giving a letter of support. I think it's going to be up to the port to say what's important or not. I think for us, it's just about seeing what regional importance and giving our support for those things. I can see the value of them moving forward with the project. Our residents will benefit from it since we don't really have any facilities like that here. But I do understand the point you're making for sure. Any other comments? Okay, well, I think there might be a vote this time. So all those in favor? Any opposed? Okay, so the motion's carried. Okay, next up, we have item 5A, report from our corporate administrator regarding the commercial vehicle program. Do you want to speak to this one, Ms. Miller?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This commercial vehicle licensing program was actually, it was ended in 2019, and we continued to do it locally. However, the revenues for this program were nowhere near the expenses for running the program. So we're simply looking to repeal the bylaw to make things a little more administratively smooth.
Okay, so the recommendation that council repeal City of Prince Rupert commercial vehicle licensing bylaw number 3329 2007 and any and all amendments relating to the same. Moved by Councillor Moreau, seconded by Councillor Scott Morvan. Discussion. Councillor Niche. Oh, you're just okay. Seconding it. Any discussion? Go ahead, Councillor Rana.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, so I think I'm in favor of the motion, but like I just have a question. Like some other towns, cities like Vancouver and Victoria, they introduce their own commercial vehicle license program to keep an eye on the commercial vehicles, so they can who is working and what all kind of conditions. So do we have any planning to create our own bylaw later on, or what's the plan?
So with respect to that, in 2021, the commercial vehicle licensing program only generated $1,200 in income. So it really did not make sense for us to create another bylaw and another level of administration for that. If we see going forward that is something that's warranted, we can certainly revisit it. But at this point, it just doesn't make sense to continue on with that program.
Okay, any other discussion? All right, anybody opposed? Motion's carried. Next, we have a report from our approval officer regarding the City of Prince Rupert subdivision and servicing bylaw number 3486/2022.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Today we are looking for a resolution to give first, second, and third readings to subdivision and servicing bylaw number 3486. We are currently using the City of Prince Rupert Standards and Specifications spec book. The spec book was developed in the late 1980s, early 1990s. It's literally a hand-typed book that is bound. Standards and specifications have come a long way since that time, and we now know that there are master municipal contract documents that are pre-done for a lot of British Columbia municipalities. These are used widely throughout British Columbia municipalities. It's kind of the gold standard, and we would like to adopt them as our standards and specifications moving forward. We are looking at development in the community, and we need to make sure that all of it is done to the right standards. So what I'm asking for today is to have them adopted and have first, second, and third reading for the new subdivision and servicing bylaw number 3487. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so the recommendation is that council give first, second, and third readings to the City of Prince Rupert subdivision servicing bylaw number 3486/2022. Moved by Councillor Cunningham, second by Councillor Scott Morvan. Mr. Buchan, you want to say something?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to acknowledge the amount of work that went into this. This is a significant modernization and a significant effort by the staff to bring this forward. It's also the first step in getting us so that we can bring in a supplementary, which would be for our downtown standards. So we had to upgrade the base subdivision bylaw before we could contemplate developing standards specifically for our special character areas in the downtown. So this is a part of the renewal effort that we're working on.
Excellent. Thank you for the context. And thank you, staff, for all your hard work. Comments? Councillor Cunningham, then Councillor Moreau.
Section 9 here, service updates. If works are already in existence on or in a highway, lane, or right of way adjacent to a parcel being subdivided or which a building is proposed to be constructed. This goes back to the discussion we had when we tabled it on the cost of anything on a small alley like 7th Avenue and that being passed off. And we'd sort of shied away from that. And I just wondered if this is sort of another revisiting of that.
So yeah, so you know, when we, these have to be general standards. So I mean, we can't differentiate sometimes about small areas versus large areas. I mean, at the end of the day, there is discretion by the director and the administrator in this document. But in section 9, so there are times where something, if a development is being done and it backs onto or in front of a laneway or a highway, which is a road, and what is there isn't up to standard or isn't up to spec, then it will need to be addressed as part of the bylaw. There's discretionary rights in here, and then there's also other ways that security can be given if it's not done at that time, and we can, you know, there's other ways to do that. But something like this is a standard clause where if something isn't up to code that is fronting or behind their property, then, and it is a public use area, then it needs to be upgraded to that standard.
If it's not up to code because the city's neglected to keep it maintained, who's responsible then?
Well, I think that if it's a maintained road, then we would maintain it to a certain standard, or if it's maintained lane. But right now we don't have maintained lanes. So if someone is developing a property and it's a multifamily use and they say, I want to use this lane as my access, and before it was just a treed area, well, or just a goat path there, then, you know, it shouldn't be on the city to update that lane so that they use it as their access. I mean, there's varying levels of where that could land, but this specific clause speaks to that where if an upgrade needs to be made, then it should be on the developer.
Yeah, I'm thinking more of just individual, like, you know, when the city went through rough times, they just stopped maintaining certain lanes and alleyways and that, and now people are starting to develop things, and these lanes and alleyways that fell into disrepair we're asking the residents to upgrade them to a highway level. And, you know, it's going to be fairly expensive for a lot of people, especially if they live in the middle of a block or something like that. And that's what I'm looking at,
Well,
other than...
Yeah, Councillor, I think this is more for new development. So, I mean, I think this would be more inclined to if, you know, a property was getting any multifamily development and it needed resurfacing and that, then this would come into effect if they wanted to use that lane, for instance, if that's the example we're using for more of a preferred access, and it needed to be brought up to standard for them to use it, then it would be up to them to bring that up to a standard. Over the years, people have developed lanes on their own. We haven't really developed any lanes as a city policy. People have developed them without us knowing, and then they just become used. So yeah, this clause here more or less protects us so that we aren't holding the bag on a, you know, someone makes a development and we have to bring up something up to standard for them. Their development should bear the cost of bringing that up to standard.
Okay, just wanted to make a point there because I know there's several laneways in the city that weren't maintained when the city was in dire straits, and now in one particular one, the neighbors took it upon themselves to bring it up to grade, and they were told they had to remove everything they'd put in there, but in the end, it just stayed where it was. But it's something that we have to take into consideration, I think, in the long run. But anyway, thank you very much, Mr. Chief.
Thank you.
Councilor Morrow?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor, and thanks very much to staff for all your hard work on this one. I find I get a strange sense of satisfaction in repealing outdated bylaws like the last one and then modernizing bylaws, holdovers from the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s, anywhere from the OCP to the zoning bylaw to development procedures bylaw, and now to this one. So the other important point, I think, is even though it feels like eons, lifetimes ago, that this is one of the recommendations of the Small Business Development Action Plan, was to do our best to try to repeal or modernize outdated bylaws. So I'm very pleased to see all your hard work on this. My questions relate exclusively to section 18, which is the development agreement. In my package, it was page 11 of 13. And maybe I'll just put all my questions on the table, and if you can answer them, that would be great. And if not, I'm happy to get an answer afterwards if more research is needed. But so my reading of the first section is obviously all works required under the bylaw have to be constructed and installed by the developer before approving officer approves the subdivision or building inspector issues final inspection certificate. That's straightforward to me. But then it says, alternatively, a developer may enter into a development agreement with the city. So I'm wondering, in what cases or why would a developer ultimately choose a development agreement versus doing the works up front, like this bylaw is stating? And then also the subsection I there, the provision of security in the amount of 125% of the estimated costs of the required works. I'm wondering, is that 125% of the cost of the total works or the cost of the additional works required under this subdivision bylaw? And maybe it would be helpful if you would just give a little bit of context to the process of how a development agreement would be approached. Thank you.
Sure. So easier question first. I is 125% of the total cost of the project. I haven't been in a position where we had to do a development agreement before. Typically, works happen, and there's a typical path that developers go down. Our city manager, Dr. Buchan, may be able to answer when a preferred path would be to go to a development agreement, because I haven't had to execute one before.
Thank you. So in one case is when a developer wants to get titled lots first for marketing purposes, and the subdivision isn't completed or won't be completed in time. So it allows the development industry to advance their time frame for actually selling parcels. And we allow that to happen before the final subdivision occurs, before all the work is done, I should say, by use of the development agreement. We have certainty that the works will all be done in time because we have the bonding. But the formal mechanism for allowing that to happen is the development agreement.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And I suppose my only follow-up then would be the 125%. Knowing that this is in rare circumstances, I'm just wondering how does that compare to other jurisdictions, say in the north, or smaller municipalities of comparable size to us?
So I can't answer how it actually compares within the region. I can say that the 125% is absolutely common standard throughout Vancouver Island and the Lower Mainland, and it's based on making sure that the city isn't short if there is a failure of the developer to complete the works. They provide an estimate of the works, but there can be cost escalation. There can be unexpected costs. The 125% ensures that the taxpayer isn't left holding the bag on that.
Excellent. Okay, thank you very much for the clarification.
Thank you.
Other comments? Okay, hearing none. Is there anyone opposed? That motion is carried. Next, we have the City of Prince Rupert zoning amendment bylaw number 3485, 2022.
I need to step aside on this one.
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah.
If I can note, I think that you'll take a look at item 5C and 5D and see that they're the same bylaw. 5B though is for fourth and final reading. Okay, I just misread that. This could have been third and final readings in the same resolution. So
Can I just do that then?
yeah, I think you could do that. Third and
Okay,
final.
let's just do that. We'll just we'll amalgamate both those into one. So we'll do a recommendation that council give third and final reading to the City of Prince Rupert zoning bylaw amendment bylaw number 3485, 2022. Moved by Councillor Cunningham, second by Councillor Skelton Morven. Any further discussion? Okay, anybody opposed? Motion's carried. We'll get Councillor Niche back in the room. Okay, next we have item E, City of Prince Rupert Delegation Amendment Bylaw number 3487, 2022. Recommendation that council give first, second, and third readings to the City of Prince Rupert Delegation Amendment Bylaw number 3487, 2022. Moved by Councillor Skelton Morven, seconded by Councillor Niche. Any discussion? Okay, anybody opposed? Motion's carried. Next, item 6A, we have a notice of motion from Councillor Cunningham. Recommendation that council send a letter to Northern Health to have the existing orthopedic surgeon position remain in the Prince Rupert Regional Hospital. Moved by Councillor Randhawa, seconded by Councillor Skelton Morven. Councillor Cunningham, do you want to speak to that?
Well, when Northern Health came before council, I believe it was the first meeting in February. No, not February. I've got my dates mixed up now, but I believe it was in November. And they said that orthopedics, as we know it, will be changing, but it will be near home. And near home to me was that they're going to take that position and put it in Terrace. And I think that this winter showed us that having some of our positions moved to Terrace is just the wrong thing to do. You know, over the last 15, 20 years, we've seen a diminishing of services in Prince Rupert Regional Hospital. You know, at one time we used to have an ophthalmologist that came up here. You know, you could get stress testing here and things like that, and they've all slowly disappeared. And I think it's something that we have to look at right now and consider fighting for the positions we have. You know, I'd actually like to add to this letter and also a definition of what core services are, because it seems that every time we turn around, they're talking about taking something out of our hospital. And even though they're going to have some new positions in the hospital and that, they're just mimicking what's there, like the general surgeon and things like this. And so I think our specialty service is something we've got to look at and try and protect. The Regional District Hospital Board sent a letter similar to this to Northern Health, and Northern Health, I would like to see to go to Kathy Ulrich, the CEO, because she at one time had told us that none of our services would be lost because of the new hospital built in Terrace. But it seems to be that that's sort of the direction some of the people are going. So I'd like a definite answer from them exactly what's going to happen, not what people in Terrace, the doctors in Terrace think should happen, but what the overall hierarchy of Northern Health really is expecting to happen. And I think this letter is one direction we can go, letting them know that Prince Rupert wants these services left here. And also Haida Gwaii is starting to lose services over there. And so people from Haida Gwaii come to Prince Rupert for the services. Now they got to go another 150 kilometers down the road to get that same service. And it's putting more and more of a hardship on people all the time. So I think we should be standing up and letting them know that we don't want these services gone.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, is there anyone opposed? Motion's carried. All right, is there any reports from council? Go ahead, Barry. Councilor
Yeah, just one quick question. Where are we with the Angus apartment? It's the debris still sitting out front and it's not boarded up and things like that. I know we've sent them letters and that, but there's people in that neighborhood that are concerned about it and have asked questions about it. So I just thought I'd bring it up and they can hear what exactly is going on.
I'm wondering if I could defer that to Rosa.
Yeah, that's no problem. So we have sent letters. We have, believe it's mid this week, where we are waiting for the landlord. We have to wait the appropriate amount of time in order to be able to take legal action and not have it challenged. So, Mr. Pucci, do you want to add into that? We've been working on this file together.
Yeah, so the date of our drop dead date is February 11th. So after February 11th, staff will be taking action to have it remediated and cleaned up. And then we will be coming to council to discuss putting it on taxes and next steps with the property. We've been also given him an order to give us a remedial action plan for the property in general. What's his plan? Is it reconstruction? Is it taking it down? And he has not complied with that either. And he has till the end of the month to give us that. But February 11th is our date for having it secured and having the debris removed, or else we will be taking action and putting it going forward on his taxes. Thank you. And we
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
Excellent. And just to add to that then, so just so if people who are interested in that topic are listening, there always has to be a process for the city to go through in order to be able to legally get to a point where they're able to do those types of actions. So it's not just a matter of just snapping our fingers and being able to go onto people's properties and start cleaning things up and doing whatever we feel. It's people's private property and they're given the opportunity to do the right thing. But there is a process in place for us to do actions like this if there isn't compliance. And so you've just heard there what that looks like. So sometimes there's a little bit of patience for us to get to where it needs to get to. But staff is well aware of many issues in the community like that and have implemented many processes like this to get to a place where we start cleaning up the community in a variety of ways. Any other reports or questions or inquiries from members of council? Councillor Adey?
Yeah, I'm going to maybe in a backhanded way link to two things that I've expressed concerns about previously. I was looking at the RCMP website, and they have a public information portal, which I think is a really valuable snapshot of the kinds of things that they're dealing with. And I noticed that there is a year in review, which would refer to 2021. And there's a list of a categorization of different types of files that the RCMP deals with. Some of them are the predictable ones of impaired driving and so on. I was struck by a couple. One was the total files related to November's windstorm was 21, and total mental health related files was 358. And so I found myself wondering, well, I'd like to know more about that. I'm curious about that. And so I'm hearkening back to having raised the point that at some point soon, I hope we're going to be able to get together with the RCMP and have a conversation where we're able to ask questions that are suitable for public discussion. And I do understand that there is a transitional process, which is not necessarily yet complete in terms of being able to get there. So I'd like to leave that there with the reminder that I'm still interested in that happening. And so if Dr. Buchan, if you'd like to speak to that at all, maybe I'll just kind of pose the second part of my point and then have a chance to weigh in. The second part of my point relates to the conversation we're just having about Northern Health having come and given us a presentation in which they spoke to some of the issues that we've just been talking about around services and availability and location. But one of the things that came out of that as well was there was a discussion that related to mental health, specifically with respect to the impact of the COVID pandemic and what that might have meant in terms of mental health issues. So provoked by 358 mental health related files for the RCMP, I thought, well, one of the responses that a number of the Northern Health officials said was that the mental health thing is a very significant, they're very aware of it as a very significant impact of the pandemic, but that it would require another hour of discussion or a whole separate section. So I guess the point that I'm making is I think there is a place for, I'm not sure what the right mechanism is. I think there's a place for some information sharing about mental health services and the challenges facing people who work in that field here with respect to the pandemic, but also in a general sense. I think that it would be really good, a good information sharing piece for the public to be exposed to. And I guess I would like us to think about ways to move that forward to see if we can make that happen. And so that's more or less what I had to say about that.
Go ahead, Mr. Buchan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just with respect to the RCMP and communications, I'm pleased to say that we are in the final stages of the recruitment process for a new officer in charge for our detachment. And during the process the first part of the process that I've been involved in, we certainly spoke about the need for regular reporting out to the committee and to council. So I think that council will be receiving regular visits and reporting, as will administration from the RCMP. So I think there'll be an opportunity for appropriate conversations within the public context in the near future. And with respect to the mental health points, certainly staff will put their minds to considering how that might, we might engage in that topic.
Councilor Cunningham.
On a lighter note, I understand there was a bet between the mayor of Queen Charlotte City and our mayor about the outcome of the basketball games on the weekend, and I know it went down to 1-1, and I never got the final 2-1. So who's going to be wearing what and when?
Well, CHSS won by just a few points in the final game. I think it was like only just a few points, and they went into bonus round. And I actually met up with Mayor Olson from Queen Charlotte last night at the ferry terminal and took a picture with him. But I just got a text message from him from his council meeting tonight, and he is wearing his jersey, our jersey, at his council meeting right now in Queen Charlotte. So a deal's a deal, and yeah, it was fun. I think it made the playoff even more intense, and definitely made the whole event a lot more exciting for everybody. So yeah, it was a fun little event.
I'll have to contact Chris then, because he was really crowing after they won the first game.
Yeah, he texted me too, and it was going down to the ferry terminal last night with all the students there and all the players. They definitely looked a little somber, and I walked in there and they all kind of looked at me and I said, "It wasn't my idea."
Love it.
So yeah, just so people know, Mayor Olson is actually the coach of the team. So he's actually he's their coach. So that's why I think he came up with that idea. So I thought that was pretty neat. Yeah.
Yeah.
Any other comments from council or any other inquiries? Councilor Reinhauer.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Like same thing, like if we can, so this winter, like lots of people can go to terrace for their appointments because they were not feeling comfortable to drive, and there was not much choice for them to go. So if we can write down a letter to BC Bus or Northern Health Bus, so they can have make like a proper arrangements, like regular service to Terrace. So I was wondering if we can write down letter for them.
Yeah, I'm actually scheduled to talk with them, so I can chat with them too, and I can write a letter. That's no problem.
Thank you.
Any other comments from council this evening? Okay, entertain a motion to adjourn. Moved by Councillor Cunningham, second by Councillor Adie. Anybody opposed? Motion's carried. Okay, we'll see you all in 2 weeks. Have a great evening.
Good night, everybody.